GRN all across the Lone Star State.
It's GRN Alive,
bringing you faith, fun, and facts.
Live from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
Join us on the show. Call
877-757-9424.
877-757-9424.
Good morning and happy Easter and welcome to the Friday edition of GRN Alive here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. So glad that you're joining us on this April 17th. It's a really special day in the liturgical calendar. Friday of the octave of Easter. We're going to talk about that in a second. What do you do on a Friday in an octave of Easter? It's a solemnity, but Fridays generally are a day when you're supposed to be kind of solemn, and it's a day of penance, but it's a solemnity, so I think we're supposed to celebrate today. I'm going to ask Dr. Chris Malloy about that in just a minute. Also, 2 days away from the celebration of Divine Mercy Sundays. So we are in a rich time in our liturgical calendar, and we're going to talk a lot about that during the program today. Thank you so much for joining us. We love for you to participate in the program. 877-757-9424 is the phone number, 877-757-9424. My name is Dave Palmer. I am the host of the Friday edition of GRN Alive. Joe McLean and the team down in Houston do a wonderful job on Mondays, and so we do this 2 days a week. And I am always joined by Dr. Chris Malloy. He is a professor of theology at the University of Dallas, normally in studio, but he is keeping his safe distance from all of us and practicing extreme social distancing. So he is at home today, but he is going to join us for most of the hour. Good morning, Dr. Malloy. How are you?
Good morning. I'm actually at work or on my way to work and wearing a hood and a space outfit and gloves.
Okay. I probably wouldn't even. I'm gonna. There's the county of Dallas has put on some restrictions. I don't know if that's why you're doing it or if this is just a costume day at University of Dallas or what. But we'll talk about that in just a second. I do have a question for you here in just a moment. I'll put you on the spot a little bit. By the way, Cecil Anderson is here. She's running the board,
Good
producing,
morning.
doing news and multitasking. And then Diane Xavier does all of our social media. We do invite people, if you're able to, and you're at a computer and you can get online, go to the Guadalupe Radio Network Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter page. The handle is GRN Online, and you can see behind the scenes what's going on. All of us, you can see a picture of Dr. Malloy with his bow tie. Okay, we made sure we.
You have a bow tie on that, space suit that you're wearing.
Yeah, still got the bow tie, right, Dr. Malloy?
I'm wearing one. I've got a bow tie on now.
Okay. All right. Good. I just want to make sure you had your entire, outfit on for the sake of this show. All right.
The uniform is on.
So here's the question, Dr. Malloy. Cecil and Diane and I were talking about this. We were asking each other about the octave. Okay. This is the Friday of the octave of Easter. Friday typically is a day of penance. And we were just asking each other if somebody were to come up to us and say, "What is an octave? What is that all about? What does it mean that we're in an octave of Easter?"
And
Easter?
not the musical terminology.
Yeah, right, and not in the musical sense. What does that exactly mean? And I figured, well, Dr. Malloy has a degree, a PhD in theology. I bet he knows the answer to this question. Can you explain that to us? What's an octave?
You got to know all theological answers when you get the PhD.
Yes.
They put that hat on your head and you know them all. So an octave is 8 days, as it sounds, right? 8 days of solemnity, right? So, and basically explaining it in terms of, the Mass as we have it now, the ordinary form. And so there's 8 days of solemnities. So in the readings and everything like that, you've got the solemnity for 8 days. So it's considered one big feast. And, the reason behind it is you enter into that celebratory, you don't just celebrate for one day and that's it. You're really entering into that mystery, and it takes a while to enter in, and you do so over the course of time. You kind of soak it in. There's a similar thing with basically getting ready for a season. So Advent isn't just one day, and Lent isn't just one day. So they're seasons. And in fact, in the extraordinary form, the season of Lent is prefaced by a preparatory, like a before Lent. And that's called a Septuagesima. and the Septuagesima season. There's like quote unquote 70 days. It's not quite 70 days of Lent, but there's 2 to 3 weeks before Lent of preparation. And so with the, to get ready, transition your mood, that kind of thing. And same thing with the feast is you don't just celebrate and you're done, you kind of soak it in.
Yeah. That's awesome. So today is the day when many people, even though we're outside of Lent, they wouldn't eat meat because it's Friday. But it's a solemnity, so it would be more appropriate on a Friday like today to eat meat or to have a beer or to celebrate. Am I right about that? Because it's a solemnity? Would it kind of trump the Friday, somberness or penance? Is that right?
Well, that's a good question that I haven't resolved. If you consult, basically, I'm wondering. I really do not know. But when I look at those who actually pay attention to the Friday penance, let's talk to our listeners about that. A lot of people don't think that every Friday, they don't remember that every Friday is a day of penance.
Yeah.
Every Friday, unless it is a holy day of obligation. So let's say, even in Lent, let's say that it's the Feast of the Assumption. Of the Annunciation in the middle of Lent on a Friday, then the church law of abstinence is made lax on that day. I'm nearly confident about that. But whether the Easter Friday is not a day of penance, I'm not so sure. It's not a holy day of obligation. I have seen it on the calendar of those who pay attention to this kind of thing as a day of abstinence. But
okay.
whether they're going with an older practice that's obsolete, I do not know.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to consult the one who you need to consult is a canon lawyer.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the day of penance in general. It's the universal law of the church that it's a day of abstinence. That's actually a universal law. Now, some nations, example, the U.S., have an indult. We have an indult from Pope Paul VI, and it's still there. An indult to substitute not eating meat with some other equivalent form of penance, like maybe say a decade of the rosary on your knees or something like this. I mean, you have to judge, what you think is an equivalent penance.
Yeah.
So it's actually a universal law of the church not to eat meat on Fridays.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. I bet you we got some canon lawyers. I bet you we got canon lawyers who are listening right now. I bet we got a dozen of them. Maybe one of them is listening and call in 877-757.
Maybe one of them should call in.
Yeah, that's 877-757-9424. That's what I was suggesting. Also, as I mentioned, Sunday, Divine Mercy Sunday. It's a feast that was instituted by Pope St. John Paul II back in the year 2000, shortly after Sister Faustina was made Saint Faustina and canonized, and there's a lot to unpack about the importance of this solemnity that we celebrate on Sunday. And there's so much, the Divine Mercy Chaplet and the graces. People are talking about indulgences associated with it. I have come to know a gentleman by the name of Rick Paolini who works with another network. It's called the Station of the Cross out of Buffalo, New York. And I don't know anybody who has so great a passion for Divine Mercy as Rick. And so I asked Rick to join us for the second half of the program today to talk about Divine Mercy Sunday and everything associated with it, especially the graces involved in it. And so I think you're really going to enjoy getting to know Rick Paolini from the Station of the Cross. He also hosts a radio program on that network called Divine Mercy in My Soul. So that's going to be about 30 minutes after the hour. And Sissel is going to have some top stories in the news here in just a moment. And I thought, since we're talking about mercy in the second half of the show, it might be nice to talk about justice in the first half of the program. And I think that the issue of justice is so prominent in so much that is going on in the world, in our country right now. And I know, Dr. Malloy, you've got some different angles with this as well. Many people are questioning the justice of some of the rules that have been handed down by civil authorities, especially deeming church services to be non-essential. And Sissel is going to tell us about one bishop. I don't know if you've heard about this. One bishop in the United States has made the decision to resume public masses in his diocese. Now, on a very limited basis, because it's got to be pretty small congregations. But Cecil's going to tell us about that, and we're going to discuss it. I'd love to know, dear listener, would you like to see your bishop or archbishop do the same thing? Would you like to see him relax that rule against the celebration of public masses? Do you think it's a prudent thing to do right now? Let us know. 877-757-9424. Another issue that has to do with justice. Last week, a small congregation in Greenville, Mississippi, was given citations of $500 each for sitting in their cars listening to a sermon over their radios, even if their windows were up. They were approached by police and handed citations informing them that they were going to have to pay a heavy fine. That has now since been reversed by Attorney General William Barr. Okay, that has been reversed. The mayor has had to recant on that. You may have heard about Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signing an executive order this week extending her previous stay-at-home order through April 30th. But she went further. No gatherings of any people who are not part of a single household. No travel in state, even if you own 2 homes. You can't go to your other home. Large stores can only admit 4 customers for every 1,000 square feet of customer floor space. Is this an overreach? Is this a miscarriage of justice? As we were talking about a second ago with Dr. Malloy, Dallas County issued yesterday that everybody in the county is going to have to wear face masks. If you go into I guess what you call an essential business, employees, grocery stores, everybody's going to have to wear a face mask. That despite 50 deaths in the county of a county of 2.6 million people. So anyways, let's talk about justice. And if you guys have any thoughts on this or opinions, give us a call, 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. One other thing I'll point out, 3 California churches have filed a lawsuit against pro-abortion Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom this week after he exempted abortion facilities but not religious institutions from his stay-at-home mandate during the coronavirus crisis. And so, anyways, that's a little bit of some of the stories that we could talk about with the issue of justice. And Cecil, you have some news stories that can be a launching pad for some of this discussion as well. Just a reminder, 877-757-9424. I know everybody's got an opinion on this. What do you think in relation to the issue of justice? Is justice being mishandled, or are you happy with how things are being handled both by civil and church authorities where you live? 877-757-9424. Yeah,
so amazingly, my first story has to do with the coronavirus.
I'm shocked.
And it's actually, so President Trump came yesterday and made an announcement about a plan that he has, or guidelines for opening up America again. And so he announced these yesterday, and there's a whole document you can read. Basically, he's leaving it up to individual states, state governors, to make the best decision based on what's happening in their states related to the coronavirus. But he has 3 phases, where each phase is going to last about 14 days each, and they have to pass certain criteria, as the state does, before they do this. So there's like a downward trajectory of documented cases within a 14-day period, and such, and that hospitals are able to treat all the patients without crisis care, and so forth. So, for instance, like phase 1 would be always the vulnerable are still should be sheltering in place, and people can. Things like parks and things like that can start opening up again. Socializing in groups of 10 or more people, which is kind of, I feel like we kind of went up a hill and now we're going to go going down a hill. Mm-hmm. So we went from, 10 people to 5 people or whatever it was. Yeah. And so now it's kind of doing the same thing but backwards. So you can go back to socializing in groups of 10 or more, and minimum non-essential travel that adheres to the CDC guidelines, and encouraging to still work remotely as able and such. Phase 2 would be, again, all vulnerable individuals should continue to shelter in place. Those are the ones who are going to be, the elderly, the ones who have a compromised immune system and such. Non-essential travel can resume, and actually it's phase 2 where they are saying that schools can start opening again.
Right when summer starts, right?
Right, I know.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know how this is going to work out and if any schools are actually going to open. Because, like, for instance,
don't
my
think so.
college, most colleges have closed for the semester. I don't
yeah.
think at least colleges are going to be going back. And then phase 3 is basically resume all unrestricted staffing of work sites. Basically, everything go back to normal except for vulnerable individuals can resume public interactions but should practice physical distancing. So these are just, there's a lot more detail to everything and gets into more detail about each individual subject. But those are kind of what President Trump's goal is to do, is to move us back into a society where we're, going out and doing things. And so that's that. And then, like you mentioned, Dave, first masses reinstituted, public masses reinstituted in the country, in New Mexico.
Of all places.
Yeah.
Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Cruces, New Mexico. Bishop Peter Baldacci, do you think that's how I said that right? He, hilariously, a few days after New Mexico had the New Mexico governor had made the rule that you could only have 5 people gathered, has decided to amend a previous letter that he wrote, and that he had to ban public masses. So I think that's pretty interesting. He had some really beautiful things to say. He says that we, as the priests, have been called by Christ and ordained to serve the people of the Diocese of Las Cruces to bring them hope and consolation during this difficult time. And he stressed the fact that it's the essential ministry of hope. And so it's very, very beautiful that he's doing this. Now, of course, 5 people still only being able to gather. That's pretty small, but he is hoping to be very creative, I think is what you're saying, Dave, being very creative in the way that he does this. He's
Yeah, and I think the fact that the first bishop has done this is going to maybe put a little bit of pressure on some of the other bishops to start thinking about some ways. I just wanted to give a couple of quotes from the Las Cruces bishop, and then we'll go over to Dr. Malloy, because I know Dr. Malloy has some thoughts concerning justice and as it relates to all that we're going through. The bishop of Las Cruces, New Mexico said, quote, "It has become increasingly clear that the state shutdown will last for some time. Depriving the faithful of the nourishment offered through the Eucharist was indeed a difficult decision, one that I deemed necessary until I had further clarity regarding our current state of affairs, but it cannot become the status quo for the foreseeable future." He said, the spokesperson for the diocese said, "In the events of these days and weeks, the Lord is calling us out of our comfort zones. He is calling us to seek new ways to reach the people. In addition to the mission with which we are entrusted, we also have a mission to keep people safe. The two must be equally pursued." And finally, while it is true that we need to take every reasonable precaution to reduce the spread of coronavirus, it is equally true that we offer the greatest, quote, essential service to our people. The past few weeks have brought to light many unintended consequences of the stay-at-home order. So I think he's hinting there that it's time for the people to get the Eucharist again. Dr. Malloy, I don't know if you're at the office yet or not, but I know you've been pondering and thinking about all this in light of the issue of justice. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I'm locked out of the office. There's a security to make sure people don't go wandering in. So I'll be probably outside here, and you'll hear the bell ringing. We have a bell on our campus, which is wonderful, every 15 minutes. So you may have heard it about 3 minutes ago. We have to, Dave, as we spoke earlier, preparing for the show, take the widest scope. What is justice? And see in light of the divine attribute of justice, right? Because the next speaker is going to be speaking about mercy, and justice and mercy go hand in hand. In fact, mercy doesn't trump, it just outdoes justice. And so what is justice? Justice is rendering to another what is due to them. And there are 2 ways in which one person renders to another, or 2, like you could say, kinds of justice. One is commutative, and that's where you and I, as sort of individuals on the same level in some respects, we give each other what is due. Like, let's say I mow your lawn, and you give me the $20, right? So that's called commutative justice. And God is not exactly on our level, so he doesn't fall into commutative justice. We can't give him something that that he is going to benefit from. He's not in a relationship of commutative justice with us. But there is another kind of justice called distributive justice. Distributive justice is that of a ruler, really, towards the people that are ruled, and distributing things to those people in a manner that is due and fitting for each one. And actually, if we're talking about justice, it's something stricter than fitting. It's something that's due to them. Similarly, there's a converse side of that, is that the people that are ruled owe to the ruler a debt of justice as well. So that's distributive justice. And clearly God cannot belong on the side of commutative justice, but there is a relationship of distributive justice. In other words, that God renders to his creatures what is due to them. Now, but here is where we see there's got to be a foundation. If you're rendering what is due to another, the other has to exist. And in other words, to have the title, something is due to me, I have to exist, right? Mm-hmm. So a non-existent creature doesn't have anything due to it. It's nothing. So first of all, the creature has to be placed in existence. And that is owing to the divine mercy. Mm-hmm. Aquinas, at least, says the divine mercy supplies for the weakness of nothingness by creating creatures. And by laying that foundation. So here, mercy begins and mercy ends the process. And that's what our speaker is going to be talking about, mercy ending the process, bringing it to its good end, right? Our happy end with union with God. So, but the mercy begins the process by creation. And God always has a wise plan when he creates. He's not a whimsical God. And this touches the whole pandemic, right? God is not whimsical. He creates for a reason. The reason that he creates us is he wants us to come to his glory, to union with him. And that's part of his wisdom, right? And when we're talking about coming to our end, we can, and being equipped to go to that end, justice can enter in, but we have to make some more distinctions. It's not an easy matter. So, in other words, if God creates a rational creature, the theologians talk about an end that corresponds to that creature. And that would be what we would call a natural end of natural happiness, right? Like, for instance, contemplation of God, love of God, friendships with fellow humans, etc. But on the natural level, not on the supernatural level. And it's, if God is going to create, he's going to create wisely. He's going to bring things to a meaningful, fitting fruition and end. And we talk about that in terms of justice. That if you're going to create a rational creature, there's a reason for it. And the reason is the fitting end of that creature. But God outstripped didn't trump, but outstripped his justice by inviting us to an even higher end, namely beatific union with him. So mercy once again comes into the picture here and orders us to the end of beatitude, supernatural beatitude.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Malloy,
and therein we see also.
Let me stop for a second. I want to go back to I think the distributive justice and the issue, because I think a lot of people, myself included, are thinking like, okay, I want to be obedient. I want to be obedient to the civil authorities. People in Michigan, Wednesday had this big rally against their governor because they see the rules and the restrictions and the things that she's doing as being an overreach and a miscarriage of justice. And so I wonder, obviously there's got to be some prudence involved, but people saying, okay, I want to be obedient. I'm called to be obedient. Yeah, Diane's actually putting a picture up on Facebook. Thanks, Diane. How does one kind of navigate that line between obedience to our civil authorities, which we owe them, but also trying to discern whether I don't think this makes much sense in light of these circumstances? I think what happened in Mississippi, what's happening in California with abortion clinics being open, but religious services are not. A lot of people, I think, I have that tension going on right now. What would you say about that in trying to discern to do the right thing?
Well, did you read about Lisa Bergman of the University of Notre Dame?
Tell me about that. No.
And her reaction in Chicago. Yeah. So she's a grad student at the University of Notre Dame, but apparently she lives in Chicago. And she wrote up a piece on this saying that, she wants to be obedient to her bishop, and she wants to abide. She understands this is a serious issue, this pandemic, but at the same time she wants to get to mass, and she wants creative solutions and whatnot. So what she did was just a prayer outside of, I think it's Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago, and so she organized a group of Catholics in Chicago to basically stand outside the cathedral and pray for a relaxing of the restrictions. And I think that's the way to go. Is there are some petitions. We mentioned a petition 2 weeks ago, correct?
Yeah, we were in Easter people, yes.
Beseeching the bishops to relax or try to find creative solutions to some of these issues. I mean, like you've said, the church parking lot, pull up, a small mass, no one receives. I mean, there are different ways to tackle this. And I think thinking outside the box is one of the things that's not really going on. And that's what needs to go on. So I praise that Bishop, Baldacci, of Las Cruces. That's the way to go. And I imagine you're going to see more and more bishops try to come up with creative solutions. I mean, what about confession? I mean, these people need to get confession. We've got people are suffering, especially, people who are in the hospital and in very critical condition. What if they, it turns bad over the night? They've got to get to the sacraments. On the other hand, so this description, essential, non-essential, it sounds bad to us, but it's just simply a governmental term for those things that absolutely, as I said, the crass urgency needs. I mean, there are essential functions of the body, let's say, that you can't do without, and breathing is one of them.
Yeah.
So,
all right,
but then there's taking a hot bath.
Yeah, is that essential or not? All right, let me get out the phone number because we only have a few more minutes on this topic. 877-757-9424. I know, Sissel, some calls were coming in. Somebody who had a comment, but you didn't want to go on air, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna be. We had a call from Betty from Houston who made a point. We're talking about essential, non-essential. She brought up, she says that she gets frustrated that liquor stores and clothing stores are open at the moment, and they're considered essential, but church is not. And so I don't know, Dr. Malloy, if you have any comment on that, what you think about that when there's certain things.
Yeah, that is the glaring problem right now. If we're allowing basic activities such as liquor stores, which are really, are they essential? I know some people in authority have said they don't want to have the alcoholics all rush into the hospital because they're on withdrawal. So, I mean, I don't know. Again, all these things, we rely on the medical experts to tell us, what's going on. How urgent is this? The numbers so far don't seem to be panning out. The models are always over-predicting, and they keep tweaking the models down. So those are big questions. But, the biggest thing is it essential for a society to have prayer and to recognize the one true God or not? And this is non-debatable, except with an atheist, of course, right? Mm-hmm. But among believers, this is non-debatable. It is absolutely essential. So why are we not, maybe that's happening, but I think we need to see more priests and bishops streaming or publicly, insofar as they can, maybe just standing outside their church building and praying, even by themselves. This is what we need to see, begging God's mercy on this plague that is bringing the world to its knees.
Yeah, and I think it also has to do with the temporal versus the spiritual life. I think from people would say, okay, does somebody have to pray to stay alive to the end of this day? From a spiritual sense, we'd say, yeah, it's extremely important, but you have to do it in order to live to the next day or the next week. Let me real quickly go to let me go to Lucy in Dallas, who's on the line real quickly, because we got to take a break here in about a minute. Lucy, if you could make your comment real quickly. Thank you so much for calling in GRN Live. What did you want to say?
Yes, hi, Dave. I just wanted to say I think we just have to go forward and do this. We have to do it smartly. But we have to open up. We have to ask our vulnerable people and those who interact with them to take very specific precautions. But those of us who are willing to go, just say, let's be careful. Let's do things smartly. Let's use hand sanitizer. Not be super close and huggy. But we need to go to church. We need it. We need our sacraments. We need to open up again.
Yeah, amen. I think everybody that's listening is saying amen, Lucy. Thanks for calling in. Appreciate the call. All right, we do need to take a break, and thanks for the folks who have called in. We weren't able to get to everybody, but we are going to pivot. We talked about justice, and we want to talk about mercy, because that is a feast that we're celebrating this Sunday with the Feast of Divine Mercy. And like I said a little while ago, the person that I know who is most passionate and really, really gets into, so to speak, Divine Mercy is a gentleman by the name of Rick Paolini from the Station of the Cross in Buffalo. I'm going to introduce you to him in a couple of minutes and talk about how this devotion has changed his life and how it can change yours as well. So quick break here on GRN Live, and we'll be right back.
On Easter Sunday, we recall and celebrate that day in history when our Savior, Jesus Christ, through his own power, lifted himself out of the grave and rose from the dead. Easter Sunday serves as a great reminder why Catholic radio exists in the first place. It's because we have been entrusted with a message that the whole world desperately needs to hear. The Guadalupe Radio Network reaches hundreds of thousands of souls each day with that message of salvation, that message of grace, and that message of hope. That's why each day we take great joy in joining together with you in the mission of proclaiming the good news to the world. Thank you so much for being part of the GRN family through your prayers and financial support. On behalf of all the GRN, we want to express to you our hope and prayers that you and your loved ones have a most blessed Easter season. This is Len Oswald, President of the GRN, with your GRN Family Minute.
Solidarity HealthShare is rebuilding Catholic healthcare in America. We conform to the moral guidelines of the Catholic Church, so you never have to worry about your healthcare dollars paying for anything that violates your conscience. From conception to natural death, we strive to serve all healthcare needs, protect human lives, celebrate families, and promote the dignity of all people. Join Solidarity HealthShare in restoring and rebuilding authentic Catholic healthcare by signing up at solidarityhealthshare.org, a sponsor of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
And now for something completely different. Governor Pontius Pilate wrote the inscription on the cross, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, in Greek, Latin, and Aramaic. Here is an update in Greek, Latin, and Aramaic. Christos anesti, alitos anesti. Christus resurrexit, vere resurrexit. Almasicham, hachakam. In the Queen's English, this is roughly translated, Christ is risen, indeed he is risen.
A message from Father Christopher Andrews.
All right, that's nice, isn't it? I wish I spoke all those languages. Welcome back, GRN Alive, Friday edition, 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. In 2 days, we are going to celebrate the solemnity of Divine Mercy Sunday. It's a special day, and as I mentioned before, Rick Paolini is host of a radio program on the Station of the Cross Network based out of Buffalo, New York, called Divine Mercy in My Soul, and he joins us to talk about this special feast day and solemnity. Rick Paolini, do we have you? Good morning.
You certainly do, and thank you so much for having me. What a privilege it is for me to be with you this morning.
Yeah, and Dr. Chris Malloy, as you know, is with us via phone literally at the University of Dallas, and Cecil Anderson here as well. Rick, let me start off. You and I had a phone conversation the other day, and you shared with me why this devotion means so much to you. And I know it's very personal. Can you share with our audience what Divine Mercy Sunday and this whole devotion means to you personally?
Oh, my goodness. We've done 147 programs, and I don't think I've explained that fully. But Divine Mercy changed my life. Jesus Christ changed my life. And the way it changed my life, I was always a very good Catholic. I did all the Catholic things. As a matter of fact, my pastor, when I was a young boy, thought that I had a vocation to the priesthood. But there was something missing. There was something that was lacking in my Catholicism. And what I found out was that, to be honest, it was true relationship with Jesus Christ. And it was the Divine Mercy devotion and the example of St. Maria Faustina that brought me to the realization that Jesus loved Rick Paolini. Before that, my Jesus, my God was a God, and when I do talks about this, I point to the heavens. My God was out there. Mm-hmm. He was out there. He was the God of everybody. And St. Faustina taught me with her example that my God wants to be in my heart. He wants to love me. He loves Rick Paolini. When I came to that realization, and I would read how incredible and unfathomable his mercy was, it changed my life. And I think I mentioned to you also that it was a time in my life, I was in a management job where I worked a lot of hours, and I had 5 children. My wife and I had 5 children. My wife suffers from depression, and it was very, very difficult at times because she was almost totally disabled, and I have 5 children and a very responsible job, and suffering did not make sense to me. And through the Divine Mercy devotion, when I came to paragraph 342 and 343, I read in the diary, it says, "Suffering is the greatest treasure on earth. It purifies the soul. In suffering, we learn who our true friend is. True love is measured by the thermometer of suffering." When I read that, it made sense of something in my life that was senseless. Now suffering made sense. Now I knew that Jesus Christ had to die the death he died, because that was the greatest act of suffering, and it was the greatest act of love. And after I read that, I saw Jesus hanging on the cross, having been scourged and beaten and spit upon, with a crown of thorns on his head, calling to me and to all of us, saying, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I love you." And then I thought back to my Baltimore Catechism days, and one of the first questions, why did God make me? Why did God make us? He made us to know him, to love him, to serve him, and to live with him eternally in heaven. And I began to look within my life and say to myself, that hasn't been my focus. I've been practicing my religion, and I've been doing that really well. But I've been doing it without the true relationship with Jesus Christ that he shouts to me in this message of his mercy and love, that he loves me. He wants me to know more and more about him. He wants me to share that love and that knowledge with other people and serve him. You know, in these times, Dave, it's very important that we understand that I think what Jesus is doing, and what I did as a parent, when I wanted to speak to one of my children about a problem or a situation that needed to be addressed, I took them aside. I isolated them so that it was one-on-one. And I think what God is doing with us today is allowing us to take the things out of our life that are distracting us from him, and allowing him, if we will only open our ears and our hearts, to come to him, to let him speak to us, to let him welcome us back, to get us back focused on knowing him, loving him, serving him, so we can live in heaven with him. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it certainly does. I just want to just remind everybody, we're talking to Rick Paolini from the Station of the Cross in Buffalo. Hosts a show, as you can tell, has a great devotion to Divine Mercy. Divine Mercy in My Soul is the name of his program. If anybody wants to chime in, ask Rick a question, maybe give your own testimony about what this beautiful, beautiful feast means to you. We have a lot of other things that we're going to talk about, including the graces that can come from Divine Mercy Sunday. 877-757-9424. 877-757-9424. Dr. Chris Malloy is remote at the University of Dallas. I don't have visual, I can't see him. Dr. Malloy, I know you're taking all this in and probably loving what Rick says. Do you have any comments or questions for Rick?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm hoping that that's the essence of religion, and just to speak on that, some people can have an experience from the other side where they're discovering the riches of the church, including the many different devotions, and then they can feel overwhelmed by 20 million devotions. I remember being in graduate school thinking, oh, I got the Sacred Heart, I got the first 5 Saturdays, I've got the 7 Sorrows of Mary, I've got, and then the Divine Mercy that was going on in the Shrine, National Shrine, huge. So then I was inundated because I'm doing 20 million devotions. And I think your point comes right back to the heart of it is, no one ever wanted the devotions to get, as it were, too burdensome to us. They're meant to free us up for being in communion with God and loving neighbor. Therese of Lisieux even had a difficulty with the rosary, just saying it. She did say it, but she just said that it felt dry to her, whereas her prayer was just a simple, I love you, drag people into your love, behind my love. Not behind me, as in she's number one, but she just wanted people to come to God. And so what I love is that you're focusing here on the essential. I do have a question, and that is this. Some people are confused, and you can help clarify it for them, that the church, on the one hand, offers an indulgence for this Sunday, but on the other hand, and distinct from that, there is a promise that's a promise of a private revelation. And just as the devotion to the Sacred Heart is a promise of private revelation, and same thing with the 5 first Saturdays devoted to Mary. So could you comment on that, on both the indulgence on the one hand and then the private revelation, which is a really remarkable promise?
Chris, I'm sorry, Rick, did you hear the question? Do we still have Rick? Oh, it looks like we may have lost him. Gosh, that was a great question. We'll try to reconnect with Rick Paolini from the Station of the Cross. And for all I know, Rick may be saying, yeah, I'm here, but we seem to have lost a connection with him. Again, Rick Paolini talking about Divine Mercy, and we are going to see if we can reconnect. I had a great connection with him. In the meantime, phone number 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. We also have a phone number option, so if you want to just give him a call, we can get him back on. Dr. Malloy, I guess maybe you...
I am here.
Oh, okay, good. Did you hear Dr. Malloy's question, Rick?
I did, and you know what? It's very interesting because St. Faustina was told by Jesus that the evil one will do everything to keep you from proclaiming my mercy.
Here's proof of it, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
okay,
interesting.
What I was saying is I'd like to start by just going over entry 699 in the diary. And by the way, 14 times Jesus mentioned to St. Faustina that he wished to have a feast on the octave of Easter. 14 times. That's twice the perfect number of 7 in the Scripture. It says, my daughter, these are the words of Jesus to St. Maria Faustina, my daughter, tell the whole world about my inconceivable mercy. I desire that the Feast of Mercy be a refuge and shelter for all souls, and especially for poor sinners. On that day, the very depths of my tender mercy are open. I pour out a whole ocean of graces upon those souls who approach the fount of my mercy. The soul that will go to confession and receive Holy Communion shall obtain complete forgiveness of sins and punishment. On that day, all the divine floodgates through which grace flow are open. Let no soul fear to draw near to me, even though its sins be as scarlet. My mercy is so great that no mind, be it of man or of angel, will be able to fathom it throughout all eternity. Everything that exists has come forth from the very depths of my most tender mercy. Every soul in its relation to me will contemplate my love and mercy throughout eternity. The feast of mercy emerged from my very depths of tenderness. It is my desire that it be solemnly celebrated on the first Sunday after Easter. Mankind will not have peace until it turns to the fount of my mercy. To answer your question, Dr. Malloy, the grace, and it's called a grace, the grace of Divine Mercy Sunday is complete forgiveness of sin and punishment for the soul that receives communion on Divine Mercy Sunday in a state of grace, trusting in God's mercy. Trusting in God's mercy. The plenary indulgence was issued by Pope St. John Paul II in the early part of the millennium because he recognized that, first of all, many people struggle, including clergy, with the idea that there can be a complete forgiveness for sin and punishment that was promised by the grace of the Divine Mercy Sunday. So there is a church plenary indulgence that is available under the normal conditions for a plenary indulgence. And as you know, Dr. Malloy, one of the conditions for a plenary indulgence, a church plenary indulgence, is complete detachment from all sin. That requirement is not necessary for the grace of Divine Mercy Sunday. Thus, it is a big difference. But there is a plenary indulgence and a grace available. The other thing is a plenary indulgence can be applied to a soul in purgatory. The grace of Divine Mercy Sunday cannot. That is strictly for the individual. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah. It's awesome. And I want our listeners also, maybe you could speak to the fact that the Vatican understands we have the pandemic here. And so a plenary indulgence is under the keys under the power of the keys, because it's actually under the authority of the church, and the church has loosened and made flexible those conditions in this case. Can you speak to the loosening or the tweaking of those conditions in this particular case? And it seems that it's for every day of the novena, if I'm correct.
Yes, there is. There's a plenary indulgence available every day of the Divine Mercy Novena, and also for Divine Mercy Sunday, because so many people are saying, I can't go to confession. I can't go to confession. What am I supposed to do? Well, first of all, you need to be in a state of grace. If you do not have mortal sin on your soul and you are in a state of grace, you can receive the grace of Divine Mercy Sunday by making a spiritual communion, trusting in God's mercy, and asking Him to forgive you of your sins and the punishment for those sins. Now, for those of you, and this I received from information, to be honest with you, from the shrine in Stockbridge. Father Chris Malloy sent out a video. He said, if you firmly desire, and he quoted sources for this also, if you firmly desire forgiveness for your sins, make a good act of contrition, trusting in God's unfathomable mercy, with a contrite heart and a firm desire to amend your life, and promise to confess sacramentally as soon as possible, your sins will be forgiven, even mortal.
That's amazing. Rick Paolini joining us. He's from the Station of the Cross, based out of Buffalo, New York. Phone number 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. Rick, Sister Faustina lived 1905 to 1938, and I just want to ask you about, some people may say, why did it take God so long to give this message? And many people often say, the God of the Old Testament was one of justice, and then Jesus brought mercy in. So from a timeline perspective, why then? Why was this message held off until the first part of the 20th century?
Well, for one thing, God was a God of mercy in the Old Testament. His mercy existed always. In the Garden of Eden, mercy existed because God knew Adam and Eve would fail. And his mercy was established in the garden when he created Adam. And we don't have time to get into that, but God has always been a God of mercy. God gives us what we need at the time we need it. And I think that especially in these times, Jesus knew that this is what we would need. We would need his mercy. In entry 198, you were speaking about justice in the first part of the program. Jesus says to St. Faustina, "My daughter, your confidence and love restrain my justice, and I cannot inflict punishment because you hinder me from doing so." Because of his love for her, he felt restricted. He was restricted because of that love, that the justice could not be carried out. And in entry 20, there's a description of the St. Faustina's guardian angel taking her into purgatory. And at the end of it, after she's seen the suffering in purgatory, Jesus says to St. Faustina, "My mercy does not want this, but justice demands it." So as you get into the book, you start to see that the justice and the mercy, and it's not a conflict.
Yeah.
It's not a conflict at all, because mercy overcomes justice. But Jesus knew, and if you think about it, when Jesus appeared to St. Maria Faustina and he said, paint a painting according to this, an image according to what you see. Paint an image according to what you see and sign it with a signature, "Jesus, I trust in you." Do you realize that the message of our God for the 20th and 21st century is trust me? Jesus, I trust in you. Think of the things, and that has been an incredible change in my life. Because when I would worry about things, I have been able to now say, "Jesus, I trust in you." That is hard to do because we do not. Ask yourself, what level do I trust Jesus? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Is it 60%? Or do you say, "Oh, you know what, Jesus? This one's yours. This is 100% you. This one's 10% me. Oh, this one I'm going to do 90, you do 10. If you trust Jesus, it changes your life also. Because no matter what happens, when my youngest sister died at the age of 39 from cancer. And I gave a talk shortly after that, and the title of the talk was "Jesus Answered My Prayer Even Though She Died." Because I trusted in Jesus. Because I know that his wish for each and every one of us, yes, we want to have lives and live them abundantly, but also, in Luke says, the condition of discipleship is that we take up our cross daily and follow him. We pick up our cross daily and follow him. And the other writers don't say daily. Luke says daily. So suffering is a part of who we are as people of Christ. Look at his life.
Yeah. Rick, let me, Dr. Malloy, I know, has to go. Dr. Malloy, are you still there? Do you have a last comment? Because I know you got to get to your official duties there at the university. Anything you want to say before we let you go?
Yeah, one last thing is there's two things. I want to totally second what Rick has said, that in this age, many people find themselves in a different story from Rick. They'll be like, I I feel like I'm a weak Catholic. I feel like, I just smoke and drink all the time. I've got these vices and I'm a sinner. And so the mercy can speak to that, a person in that situation as well. And the Catholic notion of mercy is expressed in the prayer that we end up many prayers like this, that we may be made worthy. In other words, that God may make us worthy. And so what happens with the divine mercy is that God, not because of our merits, but because of his goodness and his power, he changes us and makes us worthy of himself. That's the Catholic notion. And it's different from the Protestant notion, which is that God just won't punish us, but he doesn't make us worthy. That's the Protestant notion, and that's heresy. And so with the Catholic notion, God makes us worthy, and then Romans 8, we are able to walk in his law. We're able to fulfill it. And so we want to have that as our full picture, because what the Protestants will do is essentially something like Marcion, the ancient heretic. Marcion said, justice belongs to the Old Testament, mercy belongs to the New Testament. So Marcion said, there's only mercy in the New Testament. Justice is gone. And that's actually a heresy. And what's interesting, I see in the late 20th century, is that kind of heresy, the loss of justice, is what's been plaguing many Catholics.
Yeah, that's so true. Rick, we just have about a minute and a half or so. I know Dr. Chris has got to go, but I know you've got a recommendation for a devotion booklet. If people want to learn more about the devotion to Divine Mercy, just about a minute or so remaining. Do you want to give some information about that?
I'll tell you what I would love to do. Part of my ministry is to get as many of these booklets. It's the Divine Mercy Message and Devotion. And if you don't mind, Dave, they can request it from me directly, and I will make sure that they get it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you can send an email to Rick, R-I-C-K-P, as in Peter, at thestationofthecross.com. Again, it's Rick P. at thestationofthecross.com. I will send you a copy. I need your name and address, and I will not use this. You will not be put on a list and receive any information from our station or from me. This will go to me, and once I send them out, you will receive the catalog number M17. It's 88 pages. It's all the information on the Divine Mercy Devotion, and then hopefully you'll want to buy the diary itself. But I would love to get those in the hands of as many people as wish to have them. Again, it's Rick P. at thestationofthecross.com. Thank you so much. It has been a blessing and a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Thank you so much. And you're not people don't have to try to figure out how to spell Paolini, right? Which is very nice.
It's just
I appreciate
Rick P.
that. And we don't have time for this, but I do want to mention to everybody, and I know you would echo this, Rick, is that there's an effort right now to put the image of Divine Mercy on your front door. I think Rick and you and I have both done it.
It's one in my pocket.
It's a great witness. Put it on your front door. All right. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Dr. Malloy, Sissel, and Diane. The after show will begin here in a few minutes, and we thank you all for joining us for GRN Alive Friday edition here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Have a great Divine Mercy Sunday and weekend.
Thank you for listening to GRN Alive.
From the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
For more faith, fun, and facts,
Join our email list.
just text the letters GRN to the number 42828. That's GRN to the number 42828.
All right. Well, welcome, everybody. This is the After Show here on the Guadalupe Radio Network social media platforms. We are on YouTube, we're on Facebook, and we're also on Twitter. And we got a few people that are with us. I know on YouTube, Sissel has, I think, keeping track of the other platforms as well. So we invite your questions, your comments, maybe something you heard during the show, or just something else you want to bring up. We normally do this for anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes. So we got a little bit of time. And appreciate everybody who is still with us on these different platforms. And Dave Palmer, Sissel Anderson, also Diane Xavier as well. All right, you didn't get a chance to talk too much during the show. We had a great guest. I thought Rick was awesome. Any thoughts about Divine Mercy, or what do you think?
So obviously we started talking a little bit about the Protestants at the end, and I come from a Protestant background. So Divine Mercy is still, to an extent, a new concept for, the image of Divine Mercy, the devotion. So anytime I hear more about it or learn a little bit more about it, it is just so beautiful. And I thank God that we have that devotion.
Yeah, I think it's awesome as well. I sometimes wonder if we've skewed too far on mercy, where you get this this thought of dare we hope that all men are saved? Something that von Balthasar first proposed, and there are some priests and even bishops that have echoed that.
Sure.
And I think it's a little dangerous to be talking about excessive mercy, excessive hope, because then people think like, well, I can just kind of do whatever I want.
And that's actually that's a problem I find that Protestantism does have, and growing up with it, is that when you don't have confession and you don't have any actual, I'll say, earthly reprimanding from your sins, it's really easy to fall into that I'm once saved, always saved.
Yeah.
I've done my thing. You know what I mean? I can, so many people who are Christians, but the way they live out their life is not in a Christian way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely it's a fine line to walk.
Once saved, always saved. I think the reason why it's so appealing is that who wouldn't want that?
Well, yeah,
it's just a matter of is it true or not? I mean, can you just make that declaration of Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, that declaration of faith, and then you go on living any way you want. Now, they wouldn't say that. They wouldn't say you can go on and become an axe murderer if you want, and you're still saved. But in principle, that's what it means, right?
But they'd say but in my heart, Jesus, and it is. It's hard. It's hard to talk to people and realize that, because it's incredibly, incredibly attractive.
Yeah, it sure is. All right, so we started off the program talking about the justice. I gave a few examples of some of the areas in government where people saying there's an overreach having to do with this pandemic, which is interesting, because the people who are for the strict measures really talk about mercy. They say, have mercy on your grandma, your grandpa, your the people who are vulnerable here, and so we all need to stay indoors. We all need to be restricted. We all need to wear face masks because of the safety of other people. So their intentions are probably good, but where is that fine line of obedience? And I don't know. I know I get a little prideful about it, and I have more of a pushback mentality, maybe to too much of a degree. I don't know. Where do you fall?
I think I fall pretty neutrally, honestly, because I think part of it is because I feel like my personal life is not as affected as much, obviously, besides having mass, but unable to celebrate a public mass with other people and church gatherings. I think for me, it got a little bit more like, really, when it went down to no private gatherings of even under 10 people. And I was like, because you're like, I have this time and I would love to take this time to reconnect and pray with my friends, in person and see them. But I understand it on both ends. That makes sense. Yeah. So, I think
that's the problem. Is and not that there's a problem, but it's it does kind of make sense on both sides.
It does.
And,
but
there's also
reasons.
A spectrum where, like the governor of Michigan, I think most people would say is going too far. Some people may say the Bishop of Las Cruces he's too light. I don't know.
Right. And I what frustrates me is things like when Betty called in and mentioned about how liquor stores and clothing stores are open. There is that double standard. Like, wait, what are we saying is essential and what is not? So I do get frustrated on that when churches especially get put as the non-essential, and the abortions are still allowed to happen in certain states, and those sort of things. Definitely I go, okay, there's some horrendous misbalance going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let us know what you're thinking if you're out there listening or watching on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. This is the after show of GRN Live. We spent the hour on the radio talking about both issues of justice and also issues of mercy. And we didn't get too much into this whole idea of that, is God displaying his justice from the pandemic, and it really is a plague. I mean, when you talk about it, when you've got the entire world being affected by a particular illness, I think it was almost by definition is a plague. Now, whether God sent it or just allowed it, we know he at least allowed it. Some people have said the areas that are being impacted. Some people have said New York is being impacted because of the abortion law. New Orleans because of Mardi Gras. I'm not saying that this is the case, but I'm just saying that some people have said this. Italy seems to have been disproportionately impacted, and so why certain areas? And is it divine justice? Is it just God allowing this to happen? I don't know. What do you think?
The U.S. has the most deaths in the world.
Yeah, and has for the last couple of weeks, right?
Yes.
And now I don't know about reporting from countries like China and whether they're reporting accurately, but why do you think that's so? Because we only have about 5% of the world's population, but we have a large percentage of the cases. Is it just an issue of reporting, or what do you think?
I think we're doing a lot of testing more than other countries, and so the reports are higher.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we've been aggressive in testing.
Yeah.
When we were lax at the very beginning.
Yeah. I wonder also, because we have a lot of travel in and out of the country, and it's a very, there's a lot of people were probably coming and going from different countries more so than other places. And did that tend to spread it more? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right. Anything else in the program strike your fancy? We had a couple of good calls that came in. Our dear Maria friend didn't get on. Do you know what she was going to ask?
I don't. I think she was just listening, and if she had something to contribute, she was going to. But she really liked what Rick had to say.
She just kind of calls in and is put on hold and just listens to the show that way, right?
She does. She likes to listen and to see if she has anything she can add to the conversation. So this time, she really enjoyed our guest. So.
Yeah.
He had some great things to say, very beautiful things to say.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that
I like how the divine mercy to him is very personal. Sometimes we just say like, it's a nice feast and it's great that God has mercy on the world, but he was very adamant that it's not that God loves, all people. He said God loves Rick Paolini, which I think is when you do get that into your heart. And obviously the Spanish side thought that was a really good point there, right?
Yeah, so they just rang their bells for that day, just
ring the
for
bell.
you.
Yeah.
I think I feel like everyone probably has some sort of personal story with divine mercy in some way or another, even if they don't realize it, or something to do with the devotion to divine mercy. I know the day that my mother had her stroke that she ultimately passed away from, I was at an event here locally in the Dallas area, a women's event, where I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but the wonderful woman who sings the Divine Mercy song that we play at 3 o'clock on the Guadalupe Radio Network was there. And she was singing that song right before I got the call that, it's a very interesting, and she was just telling the story about her personal story with Divine Mercy, which is with her son who had passed away and stuff like that. So it was a very interesting, there's lots of things that you find that make connections and stuff like that, God incidences and stuff like that. So definitely the Divine Mercy Chapel and the Divine Mercy Devotion is very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, very good. Diane, anything about that?
I just love the image, of Jesus and the Divine Mercy. How it glows from his heart. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that we as a network pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m.
Yeah. And we got my friend Daniel Da Silva, who has a website, used to be a sponsor in the station, where the original Divine Mercy image, and very few people know that the instructions from Jesus to Sister Faustina about the image was not given in Poland. It was given in Lithuania.
Right.
And to this day, the original image of Divine Mercy is in Lithuania, but everybody associates it with Poland because that's where Sister Faustina was from. I was thinking about having him on the program today as well. He was my other choice for a good guest, and Daniel would have been great as well. All right, so the other topic, if if your bishop were to say you can go back to mass this weekend, and let's just say hypothetically there were no restrictions on how many people, would you go?
Oh,
would
100%.
you'd go in? You wouldn't concern you too much about
No,
being
definitely. The only thing I would caution is, okay, so yeah, I would have no problem personally going, anyone in my family going. I would not go out of my way to meet with people who I feel like have compromised immune systems. I would not. I would avoid seeing them for a while in person. So, yeah. But other than that, I would have no issue going.
Yeah. All right. Diane?
Oh, I wouldn't have any issues going. Being at home on Sundays and not being able to go to mass live there's a void, and so I would love to just go at the first opportunity. Just hopefully it's not overcrowded because everybody's
right.
Yeah.
I do wonder. That's a good point, Diane. Like when the churches open are able to have public masses again with no restrictions, how full are they going to be?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be one of those things that slowly builds up? Are people going to be still quite cautious and, some people will stay away for a while and then it'll get back to like regular amounts? Or is it just going to be filled to the brim the first week?
Yeah. And on a different note, is just as far as hygiene and, interaction and distancing and all that, 6 months or a year from now, are we going to have to be more reluctant to put your hand out when you meet somebody?
Oh.
Hey, this is Joe, and you haven't met him, and do you put your hand out, or do you have to say, okay, is that? It's kind of like how hugs are right now. If I meet somebody like a lady, I always have that question, like,
what do you do?
Do I offer a hug? Do I not? Is that going to become the new the handshake?
Right.
Do you do it or not? Or do people
funny.
just because I'd say very, very few people, 2-3 months ago would not shake your hand. There are some people that are really weird about that kind of stuff, but it was very rare. But is that going to be more common now?
Yeah, it's weird because I just like trained myself to remember to shake people's hands because I'm generally one of those awkward people who never knows what to do. I'm like, what are we doing? Are we doing a fist bump, a handshake? What is happening? And so I sometimes generally just avoid it and just do a nice to meet you, nod my head sort of thing. And so it's been really weird the last few weeks when, I see people, I'm like, okay, don't shake hands.
Yeah,
now I'm like confident, like I am going to shake your hand and not be awkward.
It's probably different for women, but I know I have had the situation where, I meet somebody introduces me to a lady and I kind of get that vibe and I just go in for the little side hug or something. And then like halfway through it, I'm like, this was not a good idea. This is not what she wanted.
Abandon, avoid the situation.
And I just wonder now, it's kind of like the sign of peace. Have you ever extended your hand and then that person didn't want to shake your hands, and it's kind of that awkward. Yeah, there's somebody like that in our parish, and I've come to know that she just is not going to shake your hand.
No.
And maybe she has her reasons, but a lot of people don't like the sign of peace at all anyways. It may not be sanitary reasons. They just don't think it's appropriate.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Well, we'll see. It's a new world, but...
Yeah, we'll see if social norms change as a result of this pandemic. Down the road, that is.
Yeah.
Right. When we're able to go out. It's become kind of a joke among my friends. Every time we'll say, I keep coming up with amazing ideas of things we should do, but they require going outside and, seeing each other. And we're just like, when we're allowed to, see each other again, we'll do this. So I'm going to have a long laundry list of things.
So if your neighbor said, hey, can I come over and play a board game with you? I guess we're officially not supposed to do that, right?
Not officially, no.
So.
No, yeah. I mean, in our neighborhood, like we've mentioned before, everyone in the world is outside, like riding bikes, taking walks. So I see my neighbors more often than I ever have before.
Yeah, that's true.
My sister and I delivered Easter goodies to all of our like nearby neighbors on Easter. We did the drop it off, ring the doorbell, and run away. Not because we were scared of shedding germs. I want to say that, but one of my friends also came and picked up I had some instant coffee she needed for a recipe. And she came to my house, and we did this little kind of sketchy drop where I put it on the mailbox, and I took steps back, and she got out of her car, and it probably looks so funny. But
yeah, I've definitely had more interaction with neighbors the last 2 months than I have in the past. I think I mentioned that our next door neighbor we had no relationship with, and he's over helping me put sod down in my yard, and we just have a great relationship now. All right, well, it's 14 minutes after the hour. Is there anything else related to the program or anything else that you guys want to talk about? Or have we exhausted everything? We've got any comments on...
I haven't gotten any. If anyone would like to give a comment, I would love to see that pop up. If you are either watching on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube at grnonline.com or grn@grnonline. I know what I'm saying. Yeah. So
Yeah, that.
that thing. You can find it. That'd be great if anyone has any.
All right. Predictions next Friday when we do our program. Do you think we'll say, wow, there's 5 more bishops that have opened up public masses? Or are we going to say, wow, it's still just that one bishop from Las Cruces? What do you think? What's your prediction?
Well, I think we can make a decision after April 30th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say, I think that a couple more will. I don't think it's going to be a huge bunch of people, but I think some random, sporadic across the country, some other bishops.
And it'll be like less populous states.
Yeah,
It'll be like in South Dakota or something.
And probably not like a state that is struggling a lot. You know what I mean with this.
Yeah.
So I don't think New Mexico is high on the list of cases.
Yeah.
So yeah. So probably not a California or a New York.
But in New Mexico, if your parish now has public masses and they're only going to let 4 people in other than the priest, are you going to say, yeah, I'm going to get there, 3 hours early and get in line? I mean, that
Okay, so 4 people in, but remember, to have a mass, you need more than just sometimes you need more than just a priest. Yeah, you're going to need some servers, maybe a deacon, maybe, so is it going to be really anyone besides the people actually, serving in the mass?
I think it's more symbolic that he's done that.
And
also the outdoor masses.
Masses bringing communion out to the cars, kind of like what we did a few weeks ago. So that'll be interesting to see what they do. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've pretty much exhausted all the after show topics. Unless you guys have anything else, I want to thank everybody for sticking with us for the after show. And don't forget, tomorrow at 10 o'clock Central, there's a replay of GRN Alive. Now, it goes back and forth between the Monday and the Friday one. I'm not sure which one will be played tomorrow. And then Monday at 8 o'clock Central, Joe and the team down in Houston will have GRN Alive Monday edition, and then we will be back Friday at 8 o'clock. I do have one interview lined up for that show. We're going to talk about the Knights of Columbus.
Ooh, exciting.
The long history of the Knights of Columbus. There's a book that came out, so that'll be the last part of the show. And then who knows what else we'll talk about or what will be in the news in 7 days. So anyways, thank you for sticking with us, and God bless you. Have a great weekend and a great celebration of Divine Mercy on Sunday. God bless. All right. Well, that was kind of an awkward show in a way, with losing Rick and then I don't like having Chris remote.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
It's so hard.
And I don't know what happened with Rick. He never lost connection. I think he might have turned his mic off.
Oh,